I'm OG, and I just recently completed a thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. I started on February 23rd of 2023 and finished on July 23rd of 2023. This is my post-hike gear review, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's really just kind of going over what it is that I had in my pack at the very end. If you are coming to this video because you are thinking about doing an AT hike, maybe starting next year, I started in February, so the gear that I'm going to be showing you today is much different than what I started with. So if you want to stick around to the very end of the video, I'll include the gear that I mailed home, and I mailed that home at Delaware Water Gap in Pennsylvania, right where Pennsylvania ends and New Jersey begins. So if you want to stick around to the end, I'll show you what it is that I mailed home at that point. All right, so I'm going to start with external. These were my trekking poles. They were the Cascade design. I got them off of Amazon. I think I paid like 30 bucks for them. Super cheap, but the tips have nothing left. I actually bent one of them and then went to a Walmart and bought one of their cheap poles, and just used the very bottom part. It fit in here. It was the same size, probably made by the same company, who knows. So you'll notice that there's some Luca tape right around here and that the cork is split, but that was not a fault of the trekking pole itself. That was actually my fault. I'd gotten a bear bag hung up in the tree, and I wrapped the cord around this to get some more leverage to pull down, which was really stupid. I mean, I should have just wrapped it around the metal part, obviously. I wrapped it around the cork part, and then it split. So anyway, I just put some Luca tape around it and it was fine. But I mean, I got 2,198 miles plus out of them, and they cost $30, so no complaints. All right, now I'm gonna move to the actual backpack, and I will start with the side pouches first. So this side pouch over here, it's got this mesh. It does have a little hole in it. I think I either snagged it on a tree or perhaps a rodent chewed into it, or maybe both. But a couple little holes in there, no big deal. So basically I use this pouch for snacks exclusively. So I would load this up with bars. I would eat them throughout the day. Second breakfast, lunch, snacks throughout the day. Really the only way to get enough calories is just to kind of eat as you walk. And yeah, so I would load this up with bars, and that's all that I use this for. And it worked great. It was easily accessible. I could open it with one hand, pulling on this zipper. Plenty of room to hold a day's worth of bars, and it would kind of expand out as well. Towards the end of my hike, when the bugs were super bad, I would also store my bug net in this pouch as well, just so it would be easy to get to. All right, on the other side of my pack, I had one other hip belt pocket, so we'll open it up and see what was in there. So I had this cork ball. Used this to kind of roll out my feet a lot. My feet were really sore at the beginning. I had tender feet, and it took a long time for them to get tough. I would use this a lot on my feet at the beginning. It's really helpful to kind of roll out sore muscles with that cork ball. All right, also inside this hip belt pocket, I always kept my headlamp. So this is the Night Core. This was the NU25. There's a newer version that's come out now that's a micro C cord. So if you're trying to go all C, the brand new one has got that. But this has got the kind of the ultralight modification where you can put this around your head. I'll show you that. The light works really, really well, and it's super easy. I never had any problems with it. Like I said, it's rechargeable, super lightweight, great light. Highly recommend this light. So the light performed excellent. I never had any issues with it. One small little thing, it has got a crack right here, and that was really my fault. I kind of got this cord sort of tangled up, and I just kind of yanked on it and pulled this. So that's a little bit it's a little bit of a flimsy connection. I'm gonna put a little bit of super glue on it and just see if that'll hold it. It really doesn't affect anything. I mean, it still stays on my head perfectly fine, and works perfectly fine. It's just, you just kind of have to be a little bit careful of this and be aware of it. But that's the only kind of negative or complaint I have. But again, like I said, the light still works perfectly fine, and it's really no big issue. Just kind of have to be aware and be a little bit careful with it, since it does have that little crack right there. My Swiss Army knife. The reason I carried this one, or I chose this one, is because it has the fingernail clipper attachment included with it, and these clippers worked fantastic. They also they work great on my toes as well, which, you know, I mean, toes are a little bit harder to cut, but super efficient, worked amazing. So I didn't have to have a separate thing, you know, a separate pair of clippers. It also has the tweezers, so, you know, if you did get a tick, you could use those. A lot of people recommend using a tick key, but tweezers work just fine. Don't fall for the hype. It's got the toothpick in there too, if you need that. And so it does have a small little knife. Yeah, so this knife was really all I ever needed. Yeah, it kind of looks like it needs to be cleaned maybe. Slim Jims, some cheese, that was basically all I ever really cut with it. And it also has the scissors. All right, also in my side pouch was my wallet. This is a Chicken Tramper ultralight gear. It was fine, it was great. A lot of people had these types of wallets, you know, from either this manufacturer or another. Basically just kept, you know, the essentials, a couple cards, my insurance card, and cash. It stayed fairly dry. I mean, there were a few times when nothing was dry, and it got wet, and a couple times the dollars inside got wet, but I mean, people would still take them, so it was never an issue. But yeah, it held up well, and it was lightweight, and it fit perfectly in that pocket, so it was great. All right, also in this side pocket, I kept this little tripod, and basically it just would stand up, and you could put your phone in it, and you could film with it. I thought I would use it a lot more for stills, like inside the tent and that kind of thing, or just different times. I really didn't use it very much at all, and I probably should have mailed it home at some point, but honestly, like, it was just in this pouch, and I pretty much just forgot it was there. So I did use it a few times, but not that often. All right, last thing in this side pouch is this knife. This knife actually stayed in my pocket with me all the time. Really, the thing that I used this for was slicing open food packets, and those little drink packets that I put in my water, and the little coffee single packets. Those things sometimes, oh, and Slim Jims, sometimes those things are really hard to open, and this is just like a little straight razor, super easy, super lightweight, and so I just always had this in my pocket. All right, so I'm just going to talk really quickly about the bag itself. This was the REI Flash 55, so it's 55 liters. It was plenty big enough, and really towards the end, this is exactly what it looked like, and I had it cinched down pretty tight. I would have been fine with 40 liters or less, really. But at the beginning, when I had all my winter gear, I used a lot of the volume as well. So I always kept my tent here in this kind of stretchy mesh pocket, and it was the last thing that I would pack up every day, so it would just go right here on the outside of my pack. Made it super convenient. If I got to camp and it was raining, I could drop my pack, put my tent up really quick, bring my pack into the tent, and then set up my bed and everything else, and stay dry. So it was a really good system. I definitely recommend, if you have a bag that suits, you know, keeping your shelter, your tent on the outside, this is the way to go. So it does have a bit of a rip down here at the bottom. So this happened in Maine. I brushed up against the back of a tree, and pine tree, and I looked behind me, and my tent was actually hanging from the tree. It had literally pulled it out, and this little cord I always packed it down to the bottom. This little cord was down here at the bottom, and it snagged onto that tree. And I looked around, and my $700 tent was hanging from a tree. So this mesh, it definitely can rip. You can see it's got a couple holes in it. I'm gonna put a different type of repair. This was kind of all I had at the time. This was just some Luca tape that I found in a shelter, but it held up fine. I mean, basically the only thing I needed to do was make sure that the tent didn't fall out, and so I had these clips, and anyway, it did fine. I'm gonna do a little better repair job on here now that I'm home and I've got some better resources available. But other than that hole and that rip, no issues or complaints. So the tent is a Z-Pax duplex, very popular tent. This is the stuff sack that it comes in, and this is the only hole that this stuff sack has. So it went the whole way with me. It's a little bit of wear down here on the bottom, and it's kind of starting to lose some of its water resistance. But you know, I mean, this has been basically on the outside of my pack for over 2,000 miles. So it held up well. It holds the tent well. It's not hard to get it into this stuff sack, and it did keep the water off of it fairly well. It is Dyneema. So also my tent stakes. So I had this little tent stake bag. I used 8 stakes to stake out this tent. All right, welcome to my home. It's got 2 great big vestibules, but I've got them both rolled up to let the air flow through, because I'm gonna get in the tent and just show you the one little issue that I have with it. Main points here are that it never leaked on me, and it's super light, and it's super efficient. Sets up really quickly. Whenever I would put up my tent, I would keep my tent stake bag and the tent bag in my pocket, and then as soon as I got it up, I would put it in this pocket right here. That way I always knew where it was, and when I went to go put it up in the morning, it was always in the same spot. So the only little issue that I have with this tent is, if you can see right here, I've got one small little rip right there just in the seam, but I can easily go through and just kind of stitch that back in. It was never a problem. Just a tiny little one, and a matching one over here on this side as well. But again, I'm just going to get a sewing kit and go in there, put a couple stitches on that, and it'll be fine. I never used a ground cloth. It says that you don't need one, and I've never felt like this was going to rip. It never let water in, and there were some times when there was significant water underneath my tent. So yeah, it did a great job, and highly recommend it. Very popular tent for a lot of reasons. So this tent does set up with your trekking poles. They do sit right kind of in the middle of the doorway, but there's plenty of room on either side of them to get out. So basically you just kind of slide out and you're up and out. I think it's a pretty good design. The big rainbow door kind of lets you get in and out easily, and there's one on each side, so when Honey Stinger does join me, there is room for both of us, and we can get on either side so we're not crawling over top of each other. All right, next up on my pack is my sit pad. So I always kept this right here on the outside. This is a Thermarest Z-seat. There's some other manufacturers that make some that are quite a bit cheaper. I think this one was like 30 bucks, but it held up well. It was a little thicker at the beginning. It's definitely kind of compacted down, but it's still super comfortable. I would sit on this all the time, so I'm gonna sit on it right now. All right, so I am sitting on my sit pad. If you followed along with my journey, then you know it was wet. It was wet a good portion of the trail, and just having this sit pad in between me and the dirt, or me and a wet log, or me and a wet rock, it just added a level of comfort. I would also use it inside of my tent. I would sit on it when I would put my shoes on in the morning. It was just, anytime I stopped for lunch, I would sit on it. It added a level of comfort. I just recommend a sit pad. They're just really convenient. All right, I'm gonna move to the last kind of external pocket on my pack. This is the brain that sits on top. This is actually removable, and you could take it off and save like an ounce or two, but I just kept it on. It gave another level of rain protection to the top of my pack. Just one more level to kind of keep the rain out. And it was handy just to kind of keep things that I could that I wanted to get to easily, just right here at the top of this pack. So what I kept in here was my TP, and my TP I always kept in a sealable Ziploc just to make sure it stayed dry. Also in here, I kept this buff. I used this as a headband. I used it as a towel. When it was super cold, I used this to sleep with, and I'd put it over my face because that was like the only thing that was exposed. So I used it a lot less when it was warmer, but I did use it a lot. Like I said, I would use it as a towel or to clean up or dry off. So always handy to have this. All right, also inside the brain pocket were my gloves. I had these the whole trip. I probably should have mailed them home when I mailed home the rest of my winter gear, but for some reason I was thinking it was still gonna be cold and I might need them. Anyway, I think maybe I might have just had them up here in the brain and forgot they were there. Anyway, they didn't get mailed home. They didn't weigh very much, but I also did not use them at all. The whole northern half of the journey. But they are I got them from Z-Packs, and they are possum down. They're the liner gloves, and they were great. Kept my hands warm when it was cold, and I should have mailed them home because I didn't use them. Okay, looks like last thing up in the brain right now is my bug net. If you followed my journey, you saw that I started wearing it towards the end. It became essential gear in Maine. The mosquitoes, the gnats that would just kind of attack my eyes. It was essential on a few days. So I kept it handy, and I kept it up here. I also kept some bug spray up in this brain. I used up the very last of it, so I don't have any more left. I threw away the bottle, but it was deep, the 100 strength. And that was all that I had in the brain. All right, so opposite of the sit pad is this pocket over here. This cinches down, kind of keeps it a little bit tighter. So in this pocket, I kept my water filter, and so I used the Catadine Be Free. I used this the whole trip. This was not the original one that I had. I actually bought a replacement in Harper's Ferry because it had slowed down, and I think this is honey stingers. Mine's a little bit more discolored than this one, and mine also needs a new filter. The filter slowed way down at the end, so I probably should have replaced it, but I didn't. But anyway, I used the Catadine Be Free the whole time. I really like this setup. I like this system. A lot of people use the Sawyer Squeeze, but this is just my preference. All right, also inside this side packet was my kind of beauty routine for the morning, and basically what that involved was my toothbrush and some toothpaste, and I did carry a little thing of deodorant. Get that out. All right, so this is the deodorant that I used. It's super small, and I would pick it up at Walmart. It really didn't weigh very much, and it just made me feel better about myself. This was essential. This was my vitamin I. Took it every morning. All right, also inside this pouch, I had my soap and my bidet. So the bidet would fit on top of a water bottle. I had a separate water bottle that I kept inside my pack, and I would use the bidet for. I used it a lot at the beginning, but towards the end, it was a more complicated process, and so I would usually just use the TP. But this was also a good option to have. The Camp Suds bottle, I didn't start out with it full. It was probably only up to about here or so when I started, and there's still some left in there. You only need like a drop or two. All right, also in this pouch My trowel, it is the douche number 2, super light, worked fine. And okay, last thing is my medical kit, so I'll kind of pull these things out. All right, so this is what I had in my first aid kit. I had some bacitracin. Basically picked this up after the dog bite, and I had some tape that I just wrapped around this bacitracin. So I could use this tape if I needed to for repairs or for whatever. Let's see. All right, I had this little bowl. I think it's actually like I think you can use it as like a water bowl for your dog, but I actually had it just to kind of clean up at night. So you can open it up and pour some water in there. Sometimes you can heat up your water and pour it in there if you want it to be warm or whatever. But you can just kind of use this as a little like a little basin to clean up at night. So this was handy to have. Also in my med kit, I had KT tape. I did use this for a big portion of the hike. I kept it on my shins. I stopped using it after a while, but I still kept the KT tape, so that was in there the whole time. Inside this bag are a couple Band-Aids, repair tape for my quilt and for my sleeping pad, and also for the tent. So it was also my Band-Aid / repair kit. And that was it for my first aid. So if you followed along with my journey, you know that I had a little incident with a dog bite. So a lot of folks have asked how it's healing. It healed up fine. I mean, I'm always gonna have a scar, but it's fine. That bruise is from the doctor's visit the other day. I actually went by the doctor's office just to get checked out, make sure I didn't have Lyme disease, make sure I was good after the post hike. So I had some blood drawn, so that's why that bruise is there. But yeah, the dog bite healed up fine. So I did have some extra things in my first aid kit while I was kind of dealing with this bite, just to kind of keep the wound clean and dressed. But once it kind of healed over, I was able to ditch that stuff as well. All right, so that was all of the items that I kept in the external pouches on the pack. And so now we're gonna move to the inside of the pack. Like I said, I kept this brain on there. Could have taken it off, but I left it on. Left it on for the water protection and just one more place just to kind of keep things organized. So this pack does have kind of a roll top closure that you can, cinch down. So it is a similar design to the lightweight packs that are out there, or the ultralight packs that are out there. This pack does have a frame, which I enjoyed. But I am going to try with my next pack frameless, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to move into the inside of this pack. All right, sitting up top, and one of the last things I would pack is my cook set. So I'll take this out and kind of go over what all is involved with this. So first off, I just kind of kept everything in this little mesh bag. It weighs 0.58 ounces, so super lightweight. But inside, I've got my Jetboil stash. So this was a super efficient stove. I really enjoyed it. I love how this handle has this kind of rubber so that you didn't have to have any kind of like a pot holder to lift it off the flame. I love how you keep the lighter inside right underneath the fuel, and that all just kind of nests right here on the pot top. Just love how it was compact and you can keep everything together that way. So inside the pot nests the actual burner, and this just has a on-off valve and then the 3 legs that'll spread apart. So I'll go ahead and put it together and show you what it looks like. All right, also inside of my cook bag, I kept a bandana. I would use this to kind of wipe out the pot. I'd also use it as a tablecloth sometimes when I was on picnic tables, and it was just handy to have a little cook rag. Also in here was my bear bag hang. So this was just the sack that my pillow came in, and so I used it to kind of keep the bare string in one place. Highly efficient, and I definitely recommend it. All right, next, inside of my bag, I've got my camp shoes, and I always just kind of had those kind of sandwiched on either side of my food bag. It just kind of sat nicely in my pack that way and allowed me to use these to kind of cinch down tight on the side. But these were my camp shoes. They're the Birkenstock EVA sandals. I think they're like 9 ounces. You know, some people went without camp shoes, but I really enjoyed having them. I used them around town. You know, my feet would get super wet. I think the whole last month when I was in Maine, my feet were just wet every single day. So it was nice to have these as an option, to just get out of my shoes at the end of the day and still have something that I could walk around in. They're very comfortable. If you've ever used Birkenstocks before, you know you either love them or you hate them, and I really love them. I have high arches, and the way these fit my feet is really, really comfortable. I didn't use them to cross streams or ford or anything like that because they don't have any kind of way to lock in place, and your foot just kind of slides around. So they really wouldn't be safe to cross rivers. And plus, I just didn't have the time to take off a pair of Injinjis and a pair of Donner Toffs and my shoes to switch into these, walk across a river, switch back into my regular shoes, only to have my feet be wet again 2 seconds later. So it just never made sense to take off my shoes to ford rivers. But to have these in town and to have these to switch into at night, I loved them. The only thing I don't like about them is they don't pack up super small, but I mean, that's the only complaint I have about them. Other than that, these are gonna go with me. All right, next up inside my pack is my rain jacket. This is a North Face rain jacket. I had it before I started the trip, and so I just brought it with me. Had a good hood, and it served as a good shell. No rain jacket is gonna keep you warm, gonna keep you dry out there. You're either gonna get wet eventually, it's gonna soak through, or you're gonna completely be wet from the inside from sweat. So you're just gonna be wet, but this was a good shell. It was a good shell for the wind, and it would hold up to a good amount of rain, but like I said, nothing out there worked. You ask anybody, nothing out there worked. All right, next in the pack is my food bag. So I actually got a lot of compliments on this food bag. This is from Hilltop Packs, and it's one of their custom bags, and it's got a photo of Honey Stinger and I up on Roan Mountain. So this was on one of our previous hikes. So I got a lot of compliments on this bag, mostly just because it had a picture of Honey Stinger on it. So this was a good bag. It had the flat bottom, which made it handy. It stands up on its own, and the shape of it fits really, really well inside of my pack. So I was really happy with that. It has kind of retained an unpleasant odor. I've been trying to air it out for a while, but it still kind of stinks. There is one little place where the lamination has ripped. So it is kind of delaminated a little bit right there in the corner. It's not a huge issue, but I think the smell is more of the issue. So I may actually replace this, but it held up really well. It held up really well for 2,000 miles. This little rip didn't happen until kind of later on in the game. I think when I was kind of trying to overstuff my bag for kind of a longer food carry that I had. Inside of my food bag is my spork. A lot of people use just a spoon because they don't like to have the little tongs, but I like the little tongs. This one is by Navaris. Anyway, titanium, pretty standard, but the long handle, definitely recommend the long handle. I didn't use the backpacker meals a whole lot, but when I did, it's super convenient to have this longer handle to get down in that bag without getting your hand all messy. And your hands are dirty. You don't want to be getting them down in your food. So anyway, this was a great spork. All right, next up in my bag is my electronics. So this is my electronics bag. I'll kind of dig into this and show you all that I had in there. So I carried an iPhone 12 Pro, and that's what I'm filming with right now. That's what I filmed everything with on my thru hike, and I was happy with it. So I had an iPhone charger. I had this one brick. It's a fast charger. It's the 3 quick charge, 3 whatevers, but it's like a quick charge. But it only had one port. So in Dalton, Mass, I saw this one in a convenience store, and it had the little flip out. It was only like, I don't know, $10 or something. So I picked this up. But if you had a quick charger that had 2 ports, that would probably be better than having 2. All right, also inside my electronics bag, I had my Fitbit charger. So this is a little bit, I guess, excessive. I don't know, you could easily get away without having this. I mean, I use a Fitbit and I just really like it, and I wanted to keep up with my steps, and so I brought this charger. But if you had another, watch that maybe just used a regular cord to charge and not something as big and bulky as this, I mean, this added some kind of unnecessary weight. But I had it, and I had this watch, and I liked it, and so I just went with it. But you could definitely get out with something a lot lighter. Also inside here, I had the Nightcore 10,000 milliamp power bank. This worked great. It would charge my iPhone, I think, 2.5 times when it was fully charged. I think it weighs like 5.8 ounces, so I think it's one of the lighter ones on the market. And it worked great, and it would charge up itself really quickly. So slim, lightweight, and 10,000 was all I ever needed. So it worked great. Also in here, I had my headphones. So I would use these a lot, mostly for editing. These are a pair of Beats. I think these used to be one of the boys, and they were just kind of laying around the house. They're rechargeable. Like I said, I mostly use these for editing. When I would be in hostels, I would put together videos, and I didn't want to disturb other people, so I would use these. I used them a few times out on the trail, but honestly, like, listening to music on my phone just burned up my battery too much, and I had to keep it for filming purposes. And I also didn't have a lot of space on my phone for music, just because I was always fighting for space with trying to upload videos and put them together. So anyway, I didn't listen to a lot of music or podcasts on the trail. I did occasionally, and I used these. They're waterproof as well. Inside here were 2 cords. So if you really wanted to be ultralight and have a better setup, you could make sure that all your electronics just worked off of one cord. So I guess a lot of electronics now are going to the USB-C port, and so you could have a setup to where you only needed this one cord, and you could charge everything. But I did need to use the 2 because my Nightcore is the last year's model, and so it has this type of cord, and then this also charged my headphones as well. So anyway, you could definitely get a lighter electronic setup than what I had, but this wasn't bad, and it suited my needs. All right, moving on inside of my pack, we're now getting to the items that are inside of my pack liner. So the pack liner that I used was a Nylafine bag. Okay, so these are all the items that I kept inside of my pack liner, and so the pack liner is really there to keep the things that you have to have dry. And so it served that purpose really, really well. All of my stuff stayed dry. And so starting with this is my puffy jacket. And so I would just kind of pack it in there loose. It was the last thing that I'd put inside of the bag, and I would just kind of tuck it into the sort of the dead spaces or the open spaces inside of the bag. And I would also use it up against my back there, just to kind of keep any sharp edges from poking me in the back as well. So this was my puffy. I kept it the whole time. I really didn't use it much at the very end, but it was nice to have. This was the Decathlon. It has a hood. I've talked about it in the past. It was a really inexpensive. It's 800 fill. Like I said, it came from Decathlon. It kept me warm in really cold temperatures, and it was super lightweight. Super simple, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I think I paid $60 for it on sale, so highly recommend that. All right, next up inside of my pack liner was my bed. So this was the Thermarest, or this is the Thermarest Neo Air X-Lite, and I'm going to go ahead and blow this up and show you kind of what I was working with at the very end. Also inside this bag, I kept my pillow and the buff that I used as my pillowcase. So I'm gonna go ahead and blow these up and show you what this system looks like now. So in order to blow up that bed, I do need to take out this bag. So this was my clothes bag. And so this is the pump sack that blows up my mattress. And inside of this pump sack, I kept the clothes that I had, and I kept those clothes inside of a plastic bag as well. So I will go over all the clothing items as soon as I blow up the mattress. All right, here's my pillow. This is the Thermarest. This is the second pillow I had. The first pillow I had was a Cedar Summit, which I liked fine, but it developed a slow leak. So I picked this up in like Irwin, Tennessee. I think I got it at Uncle Johnny's, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I had it the whole rest of the trip, and yeah, it fit the mattress pad really well, and I liked it a lot. So I used this buff as a pillowcase. This is the buff that Outdoor 76 gives away. So if you go into Franklin, be sure to go get your free buff. You would see so many folks wearing these really throughout the whole hike. But I used this as a pillowcase. It kept it from sliding around, and also kind of kept it a little bit cleaner, and I was able to wash this from when I would do my laundry. And so it just kind of made me feel a little bit cleaner having a pillowcase on the pillow. All right, here is my Thermarest Neo Air X-Lite blown up. Wow, it looks really dirty on camera. I promise I washed it a couple times. So anyway, if you followed along in my journey, you know that at one point in Maine, a couple baffles blew out towards the foot. And so my solution, so when that happened, all the air would just puff up like a big pillow in all these baffles that were blown. And so I wrapped some string around the blown baffles. Originally it was just these, I don't know, 4 or 5 right here. It started with 2 and then a couple more blew. And so I wrapped this string to kind of keep the air from going into these baffles. And then a couple more blew, 1, 2, 3 more blew. So then I ended up just kind of using this as where I would lay my head, even though this is the foot section. But then that made the kind of shoulder area a little bit more narrow. But anyway, so that's my only complaint with this particular sleeping pad. I really enjoyed it. It kept me very warm when it was cold out. It's got an R value of, I don't know, 4.3 or something like that. So until those baffles blew, I loved it. So now what my plan is, I've seen some videos on YouTube where you can kind of cut it down, iron it back together. And so I'm gonna actually cut it right here where this last baffle is. So I'm gonna cut it right here and then kind of iron it back together to where it'll seal back shut. And then I'll have like a 3/4 length pad. I don't really need it on my feet that much anyway. I keep my bag, my backpack inside the tent, and I can lay my feet on that. So I'm gonna cut this down and keep it as kind of a 3/4 length and just see if that'll work, if it'll hold air. So I don't know, watch for a video on that. We'll see if it actually works. But I don't know, looking at this mattress pad on this video, it looks dirtier on video than it does in person. And it's pretty darn dirty in person. Yeah, anyway, maybe I'll just get a new one. They're not the cheapest, but yeah, maybe I'll just get a new one. All right, I kept my clothes inside of the Thermarest pump sack, which I used to blow up the mattress, and then I kept it inside this plastic bag, and all of that was inside the Nylafine bag. So here are the clothes that I had inside of this. So I had an extra pair of Darn Tough socks. So I had 2 pair. I'd wear 1 pair for as many days as I could, and then I'd switch out, wear another pair for as many days as I could, and then hopefully by then I would get into town or a hostel and I could do laundry. I kept my sleep pants in here. So these were just a real cheap pair of just kind of like just loungewear pants I picked up at a Walmart. They're cotton. They're super light. So when it was cold, I started with like a thermal pair, mailed those home and switched out to these cotton ones. I use a quilt, and I didn't like laying directly on this mattress without anything between me, because the quilt doesn't have anything underneath of it. I'll show you that in a minute. So I always like the sleep pants. All right, inside is a pair of Injinji liner socks. Now these are the cotton ones, and they were fine. They were not my favorite pair though. All right, next up was my sleep shirt. So this was a Patagonia capelline shirt, just like my hiking shirt. It's got a hood and long sleeves, but this one I kept just to sleep in. So when I would change out at night, this is what I would put on, and this is what I would sleep in. It just makes you feel a little bit cleaner, sleep a lot better if I had a clean shirt on. And my hiking shirt just stayed wet all the time. So this was nice to have to switch out and sleep in at night. Last thing was my mid-layer fleece. So this was my mid-layer fleece, also affectionately known as my Muppet pelt. It is by Senshi Designs, and it weighs like 5 ounces and it packs up super small. I got this to have just as a mid-layer through the whites in case it got cold, and there were a couple days when I threw this on, so it was nice to have. I picked it up after I mailed home kind of my winter fleece, and again it was nice to have. All right, shoes that I wore. So these are actually the very first pair that I started out with. Started out with an 11.5, and my feet kind of grew. They swelled up, I guess, and I have high arches and they kind of fell a little bit. So yeah, so these were 11.5. Honey Stinger brought me a size 12 when she met me there in Hot Springs, North Carolina, and so she brought these back home because they still had some life left in them. I was just bumping up against the toes. They were too short. So these are actually the very first pair that I started with, and then these are the very last pair that I ended with. These got probably the least amount of miles of any of the shoes that I had, but they went through Maine and they were pretty much underwater for about a month, and so they're kind of splitting apart here. The toe cap, I don't know, they're in rough shape, and there's really no life left in them. The tread's pretty flat on the bottom, but the pair that I had before this got me 600 miles plus and really did well. I have no complaints. It's just, I mean, no shoe is going to hold up to what I went through in Maine. It was just really rough trail conditions, and I mean, when you're basically just walking through water for a month, it's, I mean, you can only expect so much out of a shoe. So yeah, these got me through the last bit. These started me out. I really liked the Topos. They were very comfortable, and they fit my feet well. All right, last up inside of the pack, inside of the dry bag, is my quilt. So I'll pull that out. So this is my quilt. It's the Enlightened Equipment. It is a 10-degree down quilt. And yes, I kept a 10-degree with me the whole time. I could have switched to something lighter, like a 30-degree, and I would have been fine. And I could have saved some weight, but I would have had to buy another quilt. And so this one, when it was hot, I would just kind of lay part of it on me. It opens up completely, and so I was never so hot that I couldn't use it. And like I said, if it was really warm outside, I would just kind of drape part of it on me. But most nights up north still got kind of chilly. And I would keep the doors to my tent open to get the ventilation blow through. And so just having this one quilt served me the whole trip. It was it was great when it was super cold outside. It kept me warm, and I love this quilt. It was awesome. All right, last thing in the bag was the actual Nylafine bag, and so I had the same one the whole way, and it kept everything dry the whole time. Got one little tiny tear in it, and so I just put some of this tape over top of it, and it did fine. Never leaked. My stuff was always dry. So one really thin Nylafine bag for 2,000 miles. All right, I moved inside. I had been filming right out there, right out there. But they were doing some construction up the street, and it was really loud. So I filmed it, I played it back, and the audio was horrible. So I know I had horrible audio sometimes out on trail, but I didn't really have an option. But I've got that option now. So I came inside. I'm gonna refilm the clothes. But anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna show you the clothes that I had on my body, and then after that, I'm gonna show you all the clothes that I mailed home at Delaware Water Gap. So if you want to stick around for that as well. All right, first up is my hiking shorts. So these were a pair of Patagonia shorts. I thought they held up really well. I mean, I basically wore them every day for 151 days. What I really liked about them was they had these really big pockets on either side, and that's where I kept my phone, and it would zip up, and I could easily get to it. Also had a back pocket in the back, also zipped as well. Had a built-in liner, which I really enjoyed. The liner did kind of start to break down and rip apart, but overall these shorts held up really well. They did kind of start to fade out. They were this kind of black color originally, and you can see it kind of turned sort of a brownish color. But yeah, they were super comfortable. They dried quick. They were lightweight. They were nice shorts. So under those shorts was a pair of ex officio, kind of boxer style. These were nice to have, wicked away, and dried quickly. Yeah, they were good. On my feet, I used the trusted duo of Injinji sock liners and Darn Tough socks. So the Injinjis, these are the hiking ones. These were actually my favorite pair. The hiking ones have a little bit of padding. So between these and the Darn Tough, it gave a little bit extra cushion. And so these held up really well. I had a pair of, or actually I had two pair of merino wool Injinjis when I started, and both of those got holes in them. But these never got any holes. They held up a lot better. So the hiking ones, I definitely recommend these. These kept me from getting blisters. The one day that I didn't wear them early on in the hike, I got blisters on my toes, and so I wore them every other day after that. So highly recommend these, and of course the Darn Tough, awesome socks. If they get a hole, you can exchange them. So highly recommend this sock combo. And last but certainly not least, my hiking shirt. So you guys got to see me in this every day for 151 days. It held up really well, super comfortable. It's a Patagonia. It wicks away, sweat really well. I loved having the hood. The hood kept the bugs out of my ears and off of my head. I loved having the long sleeves as sun protection. Yeah, it was just, it was a great shirt, and it's not retired. It's still in rotation. I wore it the other day. That was the gear that I had in my bag when I finished 2,198.4 miles. The only thing I didn't show you was my 2 smart water bottles, because I actually tossed them. But I did have the same 2 smart water bottles for the whole trip. They held up just fine. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If you were planning a trip for next year, I know I was planning my thru hike around this time last year, and I was definitely checking out videos on YouTube. And so hopefully you gained something from this one. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a comment below. But as always, I appreciate all the support, and thanks for following along. As promised, I'm gonna show you all the gear that I actually mailed home at Delaware Water Gap. So this was kind of the gear that I had to start with, and a lot of it was winter gear. So I'm gonna switch the camera. All right, so I had these long pants. They are North Face. They're relatively light, but I mean, they're long pants, so they've got some weight. I never really hiked in them. I mostly used them as town pants, but I did hike in them, I think maybe twice on super cold days. Every other day I always had the shorts. These were mostly just my town pants, so they were kind of a luxury that I definitely didn't ever really need, but they were nice to have. This was my thermal shirt. I used this to hike in some and to sleep in some, so it was just a thermal shirt. These were real cool. These were my down booties. So I slept in these some, or quite a bit, I guess, at the beginning. But just little booties that you put on your feet, and they're down. Super warm. They were great to have on some really freezing cold nights. These were my sleep pants. They're just thermal pants and kept me warm. This was just a bandana that I had. I thought I wanted to keep it on the outside of my pack, like to, wipe sweat, blow my nose, that kind of thing, but I didn't really like having it there. I just didn't like having the visual distraction of it on the outside of my pack, so I wasn't using it, so I'm out at home. All right, these were my liner mitts. They're actually, they're waterproof, and so these would go over top of my liner gloves. But these were the outside mitts, and I wore these a few times in some rain, in some serious cold weather. They were definitely good to have, but I didn't need them anymore. And this was my hat. It is alpaca. It was super warm and soft, and yeah, I loved it. Kept me warm. So these were the Injinji socks that I was using at the time when it was really cold out. These are actually merino wool. I had 2 pair of these, and both of them developed holes. So I definitely recommend the hiking version of the Injinji socks. All right, now this was my winter fleece. It was warm. It was great. I liked it, but you can tell it's big and bulky. It took up a lot of space, took up a lot of room, and it's kind of heavy too. So all of this stuff got mailed home at Delaware Water Gap. Delaware Water Gap is right at the end of Pennsylvania, and so yeah, I was really excited to mail it home. I was also really excited to be able to drop 3 pounds from my pack, which was pretty cool. So yeah, if you're starting like in February or March, actually, March was colder for me than February was. But if you've got a start date around then, yeah, you're probably going to need to carry some of this stuff, but maybe not as much as what I carried. But yeah, if you've got any questions or want to know more, feel free to shoot me a comment below. Thanks for following along. And if you're hiking next year, good luck to you. I know you'll do good. Man, kind of wish I was doing it again.